Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and happy Wednesday morning to everybody out there. And good morning, Hank. I know you had
Hey, Jim, how you doing?
You had another great day again, Hank.
I know. I had a good day Monday. I went 4-1 on baskets and had another good day yesterday. I lost the one-day game in Fresno. I didn't know that the point guard was going to be out. And despite the fact that he was out, they came from 20 points down and beat San Diego. They've got a nice team.
Yeah, they really do. Yes, they do.
But anyway, Duke came back strong against Pittsburgh yesterday. Pittsburgh can score, but they didn't hit the total in the game. But Duke built up a big lead, and then they took some of their guys out. And then when looked like Pittsburgh was getting back, not to win the game, but they were getting close to the 12-point number, which is what the game wound up as. Coach K brought his regulars back in. And it's like he knew what the number was.
They know what's going on, especially these days with everything being legalized. Yeah, they all know. They all knew before, but they all officially now know.
Speaking of what's legalized, the NFL issued an edict to the sports books that they don't want them to. They want them to put a limit on the prop. There is a limit on the prop. Doesn't the league have something more to worry about right now? The integrity of the game based on what happened in Sunday's New Orleans Rams game. And by the way, I thought it was interesting that the receiver for the Saints said that the commissioner should have exercised his right, which is in the rule book, to replay the game. Of course, that couldn't happen, particularly with sports betting where it is now. What were they going to do? Go back and refund all the money that was paid out? That would have been a colossal disaster. What's done is done, but it is pretty bad. I'll tell you something about that game coming out of it, and that is this. Drew Brees is 40 years old now. Was not himself the last third of the season. And I think the Saints are going to have to start looking around. Brees could be on the downside of his career. And he, that interception that he threw towards the end of the game, he got hit, so that wasn't necessarily his fault. But, their whole game plan that worked for him early was to throw the ball to Kamara out of the backfield. And until the Rams adjusted, which took them, basically 2 quarters before they did, and it wasn't until the fourth quarter that they adjusted for that. Now, I haven't seen that. I think the Rams are going to use Gurley a lot in this game as a receiver out of the backfield and as an outside running back, because that's where I think I think they can be successful. But on the Rams, on the New England side of the ball, I think you're going to see New England throwing to White quite a bit in this game to try to take advantage of the fact that they're going to have trouble running the ball inside against the Rams defense, and if they're going to make a lot of ground early in the game, they're going to have to hit the outside where the linebackers are a little bit slow for the Rams. That's a little bit of a weakness there.
There's going to be a lot of manipulating and chess playing, and we all know how these coaches can make adjustments. Going back to the integrity issue that you brought up, the concern that I have with that, everybody knows that there's bad calls. There was 5 or 6 bad calls in that game. The one, of course, was blatant, and it was at the moment where they could have had a first down on the 4-yard line, take a knee, kick a field goal, win the game, go to the Super Bowl. So everybody sees that, and then people start saying, "Oh, these things are fixed," and the official got paid off, etc. So what concerns me about that is, as long as we are not smart enough to be proactive, as I'm talking about I mean the league, so to speak. I don't know why I put myself in the situation of being the league, but the league proactive enough to police that. Like, for example, in the Canadian football, you can challenge that play and it would have been overturned. You can't in the NFL, but they'll have to change that rule, and hopefully they will. But you don't want people to get in their minds that things are fixed and there's manipulation, and especially now that we see money and these states are taking in big dollars. And I mean, there was one guy, Hank, I mean, I don't know if you know this story, but there was one player, and I won't say where it was, onshore, offshore, wherever, he put up $1.4 million on the money line on the Saints. I don't think he's very happy today. and you know, that kind of thing kind of permeates, it grows, it's like a virus. So I really think the integrity issue is something they have to jump on ahead of time, not be reactive, but be proactive. And that, as far as the quarterbacks, we have Aaron Rodgers, we got Brady, we got Breeze, we got these older, and even what the guys, the Chargers quarterback, Rivers. All of these guys are 35 plus, 37 plus, and Eli Manning, there's another one. They're all at the end of their careers, no question. And it's really not that a 40-year-old is old, but these 40-year-olds take a pounding, where the average person that's 40 doesn't have to get hit all the time. And you know, you're 100% right. There's going to be, but you know, the good thing is, and I'm really kind of surprised about this, we've really found some pretty good quarterbacks the last couple of years, and we've got some real gems. And as the coaches work with them, they're going to get better, and the youth shall inherit the world, and they are, and they're finding some good guys out there. I mean, I'll just talk about the one I've seen that's the best. Patrick Mahomes is just absolutely incredible, but there's a lot of other ones out there, including Goff, that has a big future. So the league is making a lot of money. They're expanding. They're doing different things. Sports gaming, gambling on the league is really bringing in potentially a lot more revenue. Everything is growing. The league is in great shape as a business. That $9 billion they used to make is probably going to turn into $20 billion.
Well, Sean Payton's on the competition committee, and you can be assured that he will lead the charge to put in a rule about replay as it applies to pass interference. That's going to happen this year.
Yeah, and I agree with it. That was an egregious call, and it wasn't one that anybody could really dispute. There's nobody in the world, I don't believe. I guess there's always somebody, but that could say that, oh, that was okay. No, there were like 4 penalties on that one play, and they didn't call any of them.
Well, there's one guy in the world, Burleson, who works for CBS and NFL Network, who's blaming Payton for not running out the clock and running that one more play, saying that and blaming him for the loss. And losing sight of the fact that the whole story is the bad call, and that's why they lost the game, not because he tried to get closer. You know, if he stays 25 yards out and takes a knee, and the guy misses a field goal, what are they saying then? Burleson shouldn't have a job anymore.
Well, what are we going to do now? We've got one game to talk about, and that's in a couple of weeks.
The Pro Bowl.
We got no. I'm not going there. You talk about rolling the dice and not. Oh my goodness, no way.
Well, Kamara just took got a spot in the Pro Bowl. I'm sure he's really thrilled about that. But no, there's right now. I guess it's college basketball. Michigan has kind of had a tough week. They finally fell from the undefeated ranks. Tennessee is now the number one ranked team. Duke came back strong, like I said, against Pittsburgh on the road. And, Virginia has, they fell a little bit. But there's some good teams in the ACC. But speaking of the ACC, Florida State lost 3 games in a row. So they dropped some. But the team to watch in the Big Ten right now is Michigan State's on a roll. And once they get hot, they stay hot. You've got Auburn, who lost a couple of games in the last week. They had two 2-point losses, which is really tough. One was to Kentucky, and the last one was last night. Or was it the night before? I'm getting a little lost here, but they scored 80 points against Kentucky and lost by 2. And then they lost last night by 2. Alabama is playing very well. He's doing a very good job, that coach there. Tennessee, while they're number one ranked team, they had a squeaker the other day. So there's good competitive games going on right now. And Villanova, I'll tell you something. Villanova's coming on now. They played a pretty good Creighton team and blew them out. So the usual suspects are rising to the top right now in college basketball.
Well, Hank, that you get right down to it. For the most part, it's the great coaching staffs that develop these kids over a period of time. A lot of these kids are very young. They come up, they're freshmen and sophomores, and they have to be developed. And if they're not one and done teams, then it takes a little bit of development, and they grow into their positions. The chemistry among the players and the bench players, gets better, and the coaching staffs. And every team that you mentioned basically has some great coaches, and there's a reason those guys get where they get, and they're at the end of, Final 8, Final 16, Final 4, because they're great coaches with great talent. They do a good job also recruiting, of course, and so it comes together. Now, what happens though in the preseason before the conference games? A lot of these teams run up big scores, and their power ratings become very unwieldy, and they start carrying a lot of weight into these games where they're laying 16, 17 points, when they're actually a little bit carrying too much weight. And as the season grinds out, and they've been blowing everybody out, there is a fatigue factor. And these games they play in conference, they're tough games, and these teams, they're very intense. They're not like the games they played back in November and December. They're much more physical games. The games are tighter. They're more meaningful, and you start seeing some of these big favorites start to go down. We saw it with Michigan, Tennessee, Auburn. We see it all across the board. So a lot of underdogs start cashing in these games. And that's something, don't get too tied up in. I'm talking not to you, but the people out there. It's these power ratings they develop coming into the conference games are a little unwieldy, because they're going to be playing a lot tougher teams, and teams that have good coaches and have players and coaches that know how to play at the venues they're playing in. And you start to see a lot of upsets. and maybe not total straight up upsets, but covering dogs. So I watch for that quite a bit, and don't try to lay too many points. But that's just the. In the NBA, so I'll say a little bit about the NBA. We're starting to get to that point where there are going to be some teams that are going to start to tank. Now that's an unfortunate situation where teams will start to dump games because they want to get into better position for, the lottery, the picking players coming out of college and the drafts and stuff. That's unfortunate. But on the other end of it, the teams that are in contention are fighting harder because they want to get into the playoffs, and in some cases they want to have a better seeding. So it starts to get a little bit more interesting now as we get into February with some of the NBA teams. I like it better because it's a more consistent handicapping effort where I'm not having to look at teams resting players. And one thing that I will mention, a lot of people say, well, the Warriors are not as strong as they used to be. Well, Steve Kerr isn't putting the pressure on this team to win as many games as they did a few years ago when they set the record for regular season wins. And they are starting to come together. And believe me when I tell you, in my mind, there's no one, at this moment, no one that is going to beat them. They
got Booger back, and he's there working them gradually into the lineup. But they've won now and covered, I think, their last 6 games in a row. They're just they've just started to play the way they can. But there's some competitive teams out there. Utah lost a couple of games recently, but they're a tough team. Portland is pretty good. Houston, I think, you made the point that they might be wearing out a little bit, although Paul is coming back. And so they'll be tough again. But I don't think, the Celtics have been kind of a disappointment. They're not playing all that great right now. Embiid was hurt for Philadelphia. New Orleans top player, he's out for a while. A lot of injuries at this time of the year. A lot of guys are pulling up hamstrings and whatnot, getting a little sore from the rigors of the tournament, of the short layoffs and playing too many games in a row, and they're coming up lame. By the way, just on one note on college basketball, Kansas is not the team that they have been in the past.
No, but their little brother or sister, whatever you want to call them, Kansas State is. You're right. Kansas is not that strong, but Kansas State is playing very well. They've had a big turnaround lately. Kansas, you're right. They are not what we thought they were going to be.
You know what? There's another thing about college basketball right now, and that is games are not going over for the most part, like they were earlier in the season. Teams are playing more rigorous defense, and it's just a lot of unders.
Well, that's a good betting tip for people out there that are doing their own handicapping. If you wanted Hank's picks and my plays, you just go to jimfeist.com and register, subscribe, and get our picks. We're up there each and every day. And Hank, I don't remember the last time you've had a losing day. It's I asked you the other day if you're getting bored, and you laughed.
No, I never. Brady is the guy who says he loves to win. I'm with Brady right now.
Well, Hank, if there's nothing else, I want to thank you for your time. We'll talk again on Friday.
Okay.
Thanks, Hank. Yeah.
I'm working. Are we off now?
Hold on.